why you shouldn't re-sign this player. Go ahead and give me cut number 8. This was an electrifying moment that I think all Cowboys fans will probably remember for a while.
2nd and 10 at the Dallas 43. Howell's back, throws it.
Look out.
Picked off! It's Bland! It's Bland! He's got one man to beat at the 20. He cuts left. He breaks the tackle at the 10. He did it again!
God, I love that moment.
Why?
Because you broke the pick 6 record.
That is pretty cool.
You don't sound very impressed by this.
Sounds bland
at all.
Was that the last one?
I thought he had another interception that just wasn't a pick 6.
No, that's
maybe.
what I mean, though. Is that the last
okay.
pick 6 of the bunch?
Maybe.
If he had that many, how could he get more? You know.
Hold on. So if he had the most in NFL history in a season,
Seems like he was on a roll, and then all of a sudden something stopped.
why couldn't he have gotten
Maybe
more?
they just stopped throwing his direction. They were like, it's
I
useless.
mean,
why would we even do that anymore?
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, especially if they can't stop the run. Yeah, I would absolutely run at him.
Okay. All right. Good to.
But yes, listen, dude, DaRon Bland had an exceptional season and was better than anybody expected him to be.
Yeah.
And then coming into the last year, we were like, oh, man, we're pretty stacked at this position. We're feeling confident. And then it kind of fell apart whenever he had the foot injury to start the season and never was what we expected out of him. So, but this is a new year here. So hold on. You opened this segment and said why you shouldn't re-sign this player and then played a DaRon Bland highlight.
I also mentioned why he could be a bright side for the Cowboys this year.
Mr. Brightside.
Yes, potentially. Now, consider this. Besides, obviously, last season was problematic with the injuries like you just mentioned. Before that, in his 2 previous seasons, he had 14 interceptions.
Okay.
And returned 5 of those for touchdowns.
All right.
Though I get it, Corey. Why not more?
Yeah.
Fair. I can't
How
answer
many
that.
games did he play?
He played all of them.
And only 14 interceptions, huh?
Okay, that is he's no Everson Walls. If that's what you're getting at, he's no early 80s Everson Walls, if that is what you're going for. But this feels like all of the trappings of a classic poor Cowboys decision.
Okay.
All right? And sorry, I know this is going to end up reflecting on DaRon Bland. It's not necessarily meant for just DaRon Bland, but Blogging the Boys has projected his stats for the upcoming season. 61 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 10 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, and 1 pick 6. All right? That would be a good season for sure. That would be a really good season. My concern is what the Cowboys seem to do is they look at the absolute best thing that you've ever done, and even coming off of an injury, they decide that's the level that you're always going to be at, and they pay you accordingly. And I certainly understand why DaRon Bland would want to be paid as a top 5 cornerback in the league. But the fact is, he's not a top 5 cornerback in the league right now based on last season because, unfortunately, he got hurt. I don't think anyone will go into this season saying he's top 5, but I can see why he would want top 5 money. This feels like a mistake if the Cowboys give him all of the money right now.
I will agree with you.
Oh.
This is tough because this is what the sport has kind of turned to. But really the only player that deserves to be held on to, there's a couple that's offensive lineman and a generational quarterback. Other than that, you found one, keep drafting.
Yeah.
And that's I would probably continue to build a lot on that. But whenever you have a player that looks like that's when you got to learn what is the difference between a player that's a star on our team and a generational player, because those guys deserve that money. Is Micah a generational player or a star on the Cowboys team?
See, right now I think he's a star on the Cowboys team. And can I just point out, for everybody that wants to say he's a generational player, how many generation players do you get? Is TJ Watt a generational player? Is Myles Garrett? He's behind those two right now, right?
Right. Aaron Donald, I think, was generational.
Agreed.
So that's where, Patrick Mahomes is generational. A franchise quarterback, you pay franchise quarterbacks to, they believe Dak is a franchise quarterback. But for the rest of the bunch, I say you keep drafting, especially when you have a position like that is, I think Sean said this the other day, and I couldn't agree more. It's becoming the closer of football, and that is 1 year's really good, and then what happened the next year? Like the closers, there aren't any Riveras out there anymore. It just doesn't seem to happen like that. And so with cornerbacks, it is that way. Now, I also don't know how Bland is in the locker room. Is he a leader in that locker room? Is he a guy that you're like, no, man, he's a pole tent, or a tent pole? That dude right there is one we rely on. Or did he make some flashy plays and you think that he can relive it again? The Cowboys, Kevin, when you say this is a classic thing of them, they are history, and this is the Bill Parcells, Tom Landry thing. You saw him do it once. I'm sure they can do it again, and if we just pay him, we'll keep him around, and he'll do it plenty of times. But I do like the player. I like having that player on the team, and I don't think you don't either.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do like the player. I guess, and this is probably not fair either, but you look over at Trayvon Diggs, and we'll probably talk about him a little bit later in the show today or tomorrow.
I got some questions regarding the secondary and where they stand.
Yeah, and so I think that's where I fall, and I was like, man, you have been really, really good, but do we need a top 5 paid cornerback to go with, top, 3 wide receiver, top 1 quarterback, soon to be top 1 defensive end? Like, probably not.
Right, but you do have to make the decision on which guys you do keep and which guys you do pay.
Yeah.
And obviously when you're not paying all of them top 5 money, that it helps. It's beneficial.
Yeah.
But his agent's going to take him out to the market, and his agent's going to say, look at these numbers, and other teams are going to be willing to spend it. The Cowboys have this opportunity, this window to say, do we buy it out and bid against ourselves before, or do we just say, you know what, we're going to let it play out, see if we get the benefit of it?
And this is where, if we come down to philosophical differences about the way I would run the organization, and I want to make this clear, I'm not saying there's any chance in hell that the Cowboys are going to do this, and they're probably 2 steps too far after paying Dak and after paying CeeDee Lamb. But to your point, he would be a wildly valuable asset that you can be like, all right, we're going to move on from him, and that sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, before this season, you're going to move on from him so you can get something for him. And that sucks because that's going to drop the quality of your team. But I also don't think the quality of this team can go anywhere as it's constructed right now. And you can pick up some more assets and not have to pay that money next year. Personally, that's what I would have been doing all along. But the Cowboys continue to say they're right by the rim, so there's no way they'll do that.
What teams do that? Trade away these guys that are assets. I'm trying to figure this out because
the Patriots would do that a lot.
But that's different.
Is it?
No. Yeah, that version of Belichick is not existent anymore. But I'm trying to figure out, because when you're discussing this, my first thought is, well, if you start doing that, then players are going to start holding out on you earlier. They're going to say, you know what? You're going to trade us away for value, and before we get our chance, then we're going to hold out even earlier. But they're already holding out earlier.
Exactly.
They're already 2 years in advance in the holdout process.
And that's why we're in a tough spot, because the Cowboys aren't good at negotiating contracts in terms of they almost always lose.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what is that model, because the NBA did that for a while, or the NBA is in that world where we're going to sign you to the Supermax. And once the player has gotten their money, they're like, all right, now I want to be traded out of this crap team. Because we saw that happen a lot. I don't know if it still is that way, but it did feel like for a long time, I got my Supermax contract, get rid of me, because y'all aren't good enough to have me around here.
I do think to a certain extent San Francisco has done that with some of their players, although their situation is also confusing because they said, all right, but I'll also go ahead and pay the quarterback all of the money while they were trading off people, which is a weird strategy.
And I think the other thing too, Kevin, when it comes to the difficult position that you're in as the Cowboys, is your not inability, but lack of desire to sign free agents.
Yeah.
You say the Niners, well, the Niners pick from everything.
Yep.
They have 3 baskets: free agency, the draft, and signing their own. Those are and trades also. You have those options. Well, the Cowboys are we might make a small trade here and there, and they did this year. This offseason, they did that.
They did. Which I like. I like those
free
moves.
Agency, they go to the discount bin. That's what they do. And then they rely on trade or on the draft. But other teams are we have a hole. We have a DaRon Bland situation. we can sign a cheaper cornerback that's still going to give us that level of play, and then we can move on from him.
And I just want to...
But I still like him a lot.
There's an accounting thing that the Cowboys continue to do that I just think is maddening.
Kick the can?
Yeah, well, kind of. But what they've started to do is like, okay, do you know when you get those, like if you ever get those offers and they're like, hey, you could write a check to yourself for $10,000 from your credit card company and we'll charge you this little fee and then you won't get charged forever. The Cowboys continue to do that and then they don't do anything with the money. So like, for example, right now I think they have $32 million in cap space.
Well, you need 14.
No, you don't.
Damn.
No.
Pretty sure I was told
you don't.
That.
But also, yeah, well, guess what? Not every team in the NFL has $14 million in cap space available. How are they possibly going to survive? All right?
Did they win the Super Bowl?
One of them did. But if you have $32 million in cap space, consider this. They dropped Dak Prescott's cap hit this year from $89 million to $50 million.
Okay.
So do you really have any cap space? Or is it that just you flipped the switch on Dak Prescott? Because guess what his cap hit is next year? $74 million.
Yeah.
And guess what his cap hits the next year? 68. Next year, 78.
Do you think the Cowboys for a long time thought if we do it that way, agents will never know what monies we can just be like, we don't have that money until we flip the switch, and then agents are going to never know. And now agents are starting to catch on. They're like, hey.
What a terrible way to do that. But yeah, so this is what agitates me, and I think you have to come up with more drastic solutions because the Cowboys solution is, and I guarantee you will hear this early in the season when you ask about the salary cap, when we ask about the salary cap with Stephen Jones. Well, you can roll that money over next year. All right, well, guess what you're doing with that money you're rolling over to next year? Paying off the excess part of Dak's contract. That's what you're doing.
Swaggy Booties said pie.